Deities have traveled from distant galaxies to create life in their image, and slaves for their bidding. These extraterrestrial visitors needed gold for their travel and survival. So, humans were created on this planet to mine the gold and further their glory. However, over time, these so-called gods squabbled for total control of mankind's destiny. Ishel, the Weaver of Lives, has brought you together to stop their tyranny.
Hello and welcome to the Revelations 2012 Let's Play. This time we're on the first level, the Path of Trials, of the second campaign, Feast of the Serpentine, which on the main menu the game inexplicably calls Winged Serpent on the exact same screen for some reason. Beats me why they do that. Anyway, each new campaign is punctuated by that opening narration we just saw. Doesn't really tell you about what you're going to be doing, but just adds more to that completely incomprehensible clusterfuck they call a story. And here, a wall is yellow. Apply brute force, acquire a path to the outside area. I've seen Resident Evil 5 puzzles with more complexity than this, but I suppose puzzle solving isn't really the emphasis they're going for here. That's just kind of a way of sneaking a panic event in there before we hit the outside area. And oh look, boulders are rolling down. Time for some Indiana Jones-esque shenanigans. Yeah, the boulders, if they touch you, are instant incapacitation, and the bots don't have a concept of not standing in their way. On the other hand, this is fairly uninteresting, so we'll dance our way through it instead. I seem to have a reputation for dancing my way through traps at this point. Yep, this is pretty much my general strategy. You just kind of hide behind the pillars, because the boulders never seem to roll in between there. And, oh, two boulders smashing together. I've never seen that happen before, that's new. Boulders spawn in sets of 1, so I guess that one bounced weirdly, which means they don't roll on preset paths. They are in fact physics objects and can be interacted with as such. And if you pay close attention at the end of the slope there, you can in fact see the boulders just kind of pop into existence at the very end of the path. Which means if you're standing there, it is quite possible and very easy for a boulder to just kind of spawn on top of your head and incapacitate you instantly. And the bots will stand there, directly on the spawn point of the boulders trying to get you up, and you will game over that way. Yes, I am bitter. Why do you ask? The bots in general just seem to lack any kind of self-preservation instinct with regards to traps, which is why I highly recommend you get some friends on hand, but I don't have those, so I have to deal with it. And here we see the return of the Warboar enemies for Campaign 2, and they're still as easy to deal with as ever, just don't be in the way of them when they're charging straight forward. But what's a bit harder to tell is that they've actually had an increase in maximum health from Campaign 1, from 1,000 hit points to 1,500 hit points, I believe. The game pulls a similar thing with the Juggernaut enemy, who also increments in health with Campaign. And I'm unsure if enemies who don't have visible health bars on the screen are subject to similar rules, because this game doesn't exactly have a comprehensive wiki I can refer to when making these things. What? Just a simple wait for door to open panic event? I'm kind of disappointed. Most of these have been at least slightly creative so far. Well, I suppose you can crawl under the portcullis if you want to obsolete your speedrun by a couple of frames for some reason, but I don't recommend it because we have guns and the enemies don't, so they will often go up to the portcullis but not be able to get under it, at which point you can just decimate the crowd. It's quite useful, actually. It is, however, important to note that the game will spawn priestesses behind you on the other side of the bridge you just crossed for this panic event, so do watch out for those. But this panic event in general is incredibly irritating because the blowpipe enemies will spawn on the cliffs or just a little beyond the draw distance and pelt you, and the damage indicator isn't very good in the heat of things. The yellow outline the blowpipe carries helps, but not by much. Ah, crap. You can see my team has just been struck by a warboar wearing armor, and armor-wearing warboars will not take damage in a certain body part until you've blown that bit of armor off. And it is locational, so you only blow off certain bits of armor at a time. It's not you blow off the whole armor at once. It's pretty annoying, considering it's very hard to hit the back of them, if they're coming straight at you. I'm also not sure on the method by which one takes away armor pieces to begin with. I've never figured that one out. And however banal this sounds, I believe it's worth mention. The fish that are hanging from the ceiling in this area are subject to an incredibly weird but fucking hilarious physics bug that I think needs to be seen to be believed. I'll link a video in an annotation right there, so you can see this bug for yourself in action. A checkpoint and a celebratory victory dance are much deserved after that frankly annoying bullshit. And the game is at least kind enough to provide us with some ammo refills and a few health drops for what we just went through. Not enough in my opinion, considering I'm playing on easy and I went into that with 100 health and came out with about 30. Yeah, that shit just wasn't fun at all, and I think it accurately demonstrates how particularly bullshit the blowpipe enemies can get. Well, let's just grab the skull, and did that mook just materialize out of thin air? I think he did. Revelations 2012 developers, I think the idea is to hide the spawning point somewhere where the player can't go. I mean, the rice fields are a perfectly decent way to hide monster spawns. They're big and expansive and quite hard to see through. So why not use that to spawn your enemies instead of the middle of the pathway you expect the player to walk through? This really pulls sharply into focus what I find the most confusing about Revelations 2012. Often it's just a bit of a poor looking, but otherwise functional Left 4 Dead clone. Sometimes it makes baffling decisions like these. It seems like half of the game was designed by someone who's never played a video game before.
All court games provided entertainment to the gods. Only the strongest warriors were selected to participate in the event. The warriors were paired into 2 teams against each other. The losers were sacrificed to the gods, while the winners had the honor to communicate to the gods themselves. Go and play their game. Destroy the crystals in the hoops and collect the crystal skull.
Oh brilliant, another incredibly difficult panic event to go along with the last one we just completed that left us bruised and battered. This stage is probably one of the hardest in the entire game for this reason. But yes, as the priest explained, the idea is to shoot the crystals in the hoops in order to destroy them to win. The problem, and why this is so incredibly difficult to do, is that the crystals have retardedly huge amounts of health, like unbelievable. I've tested it and it takes somewhere within the range of about 4 full clips of white gun ammo before they break. And this problem is exacerbated by the fact the bots do not shoot the crystals at all. And keep in mind I'm playing on easy. I don't know if the crystals actually scale in HP with difficulty because I can't see the values, but if it does I'm just going to write expert off as completely fucking impossible for this level and move on. Anyway, this portion of the level is an example of Dark Arts actually doing their research properly, because this kind of Mesoamerican ball game was an actual thing in Mayan culture. A similar thing also occurred in the movie The Road to El Dorado, if you happen to have seen that. The actual rules of the game aren't really known, so the developers were free to take liberties with that, but I'm just impressed they've actually managed to fit genuine aspects of Mayan culture in this game. And by God are we still plugging away at that crystal there. These things just do not die, ever. Although the crystals do highlight a problem I've been banging on about for a while now. The draw distance is super poor. You can't see it even though it's right there unless you zoom in. Oh, thank God it finally broke. Oh, right, there's a second one we still need to break. But as we pass through the centre on our way to the second crystal, we'll find the last new weapon we'll find for the rest of the game, the Time Warp gun. I will demonstrate this a bit later. You can see some of the bots using it in the background right now. You can probably hazard a guess at what it does, but for now we're back to boring crystal-breaking nonsense, which neither you or me wants to see, so I'll just cut to the chase. Between the constantly respawning enemies and the stupidly high HP this thing has, it took a while to kill. But at least with that done, we can pick up the skull in the centre of the room, and because there is a Juggernaut statue near it, yeah, you guessed it, we have a mid-boss fight. At least I can now demonstrate the Time Warp gun, which does exactly what you think it would do. It slows down enemies that are affected by it, and creates a really obnoxious particle effect directly wherever you shoot it. Despite the fact the Time Warp gun doesn't actually stop enemies from attacking, nor does it actually deal any damage of its own, it's still incredibly useful against Juggernauts because it prevents them from getting off their bullshit stomp stun attack too many times, and will occasionally just block the attack from happening altogether. Like, that Juggernaut barely lasted a few seconds. Such is the power of the Time Warp gun. It's very useful, but you don't get it too often. It's a shame the AI also doesn't have any reservations about using it on just regular Mook enemies, which is why none of them had saved it for the boss, because they're dumb. Anyway, that just about wraps up this episode. The only thing left to do now is to go to the portal pad at what looks like the foot of a waterfall of flubber. I thank you for watching this episode. I'll see you next time.
Awesomplicity!